The battlefield stretched across the cold void of space, a graveyard of broken ships and drifting wreckage. Two mighty alien factions had been locked in war for months, their fleets clashing in a brutal fight for control of the system. Explosions flickered in the distance like dying stars, and the remains of fallen warriors floated in silence. The Valkyrie Dominion, a ruthless empire known for its unbreakable war fleets, had pushed the Zyrex Confederation to the edge of defeat. The Zyrex, desperate and outnumbered, made their final stand around a dying star. If they lost here, their entire species could be wiped out. Admiral Rethos, the commander of the Valkyrie forces, stood aboard his massive flagship, Dominator's Wrath. His cold eyes scanned the battlefield, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. Victory was within his grasp. He turned to his second-in-command. "The Zyrex are finished," he growled. "Send in the final wave. Wipe them from existence." Across the system, the Zyrex fleet trembled under the relentless assault. Their ships were breaking apart, their defenses crumbling. Their commander, General Tyrell, knew they could not hold for much longer. His 6 glowing eyes flickered with desperation as he watched another cruiser explode into flames. "Send a distress signal," he ordered, "to anyone who can hear us." But there was no one left to call. No allies. No reinforcements. The Zyrex had burned too many bridges in their time. And then something changed. A strange ripple passed through the battlefield. Every ship, every sensor, every communication system glitched for a moment. The Valkyrie and Zyrex commanders both froze. Then the warning alarm screamed. An unknown warship had entered the system. It came from nowhere. No hyperspace jump. No detectable warp signature. It simply appeared, drifting in the darkness like a ghost. Every ship on the battlefield turned their sensors toward the new arrival. The data that came back made no sense. The ship was huge, larger than any vessel in either fleet. Its dark hull reflected almost no light, and its energy readings were off the charts. Strange markings ran along its surface, and its silhouette was unmistakable. A human warship. The realization sent shockwaves through both fleets. The humans. Most species in the galaxy dismissed them as insignificant, a minor race from a backwater world. Sure, there were whispers of their military strength, but no one had ever seen them in direct combat. And yet, here they were. Silence fell over the battlefield. The war between the Valkyrie and the Zyrex stopped as both sides stared at the silent newcomer. No weapons were fired, no ships moved. Everyone waited. Then, a deep voice echoed across the communication channels. "This battle is over." It was a simple message, but it carried a weight that made even the most hardened warriors hesitate. The voice was calm, emotionless, but it left no room for argument. Admiral Rethos narrowed his eyes. The humans were interfering with his war. He would not allow it. "Scan that ship," he ordered. "I want to know its capabilities." His crew worked quickly, feeding him information. The results made his blood run cold. The human warship's shields were impenetrable. Its weapon systems were unlike anything they had seen. And its armor. It was made of some material that defied their understanding. It was a floating fortress, a beast of war designed for absolute destruction. General Tyrell, still aboard his crumbling flagship, felt a flicker of hope. If the humans were here to help, perhaps the Zyrex could still survive. He activated his comms. "Human vessel, this is General Tyrell of the Zyrex Confederation. Are you here to assist us?" For a long moment, there was no response. Then the human voice returned. "Stand down. This fight is no longer yours." Both sides were left stunned. The humans weren't choosing the side. They weren't fighting for anyone. They were simply ending the battle. Admiral Rethos clenched his fists. He had fought too hard, lost too many soldiers, to let some unknown force take control. He would not be intimidated. "Target the human warship," he snarled. "Let's see if they can back up their words." His ships locked their weapons onto the silent vessel. Across the battlefield, Zyrex commanders held their breath. If the humans retaliated, there was no telling what would happen. The human warship remained motionless, almost as if it was waiting. Then, the Valkyrie fleet fired. A storm of plasma, missiles, and energy beams shot toward the massive ship, lighting up the darkness. Every weapon hit directly, and nothing happened. The human warship remained untouched. Its shields absorbed the attacks without even a flicker. A deep silence fell. Then, for the first time, the human warship moved. It turned toward the Valkyrie fleet, its weapons systems powering up. The energy readings spiked so high that sensors malfunctioned. Admiral Rithos stared at the silent human warship, his mandibles tightening in frustration. His fleet had unleashed a full barrage. Plasma cannons, ion beams, high-impact railguns, yet the monstrous vessel remained completely unharmed. The energy readings barely fluctuated. The ship just sat there, untouched, unshaken, like a god staring down at insects. Panic crept into his officers' voices. "Admiral, our weapons had zero effect. Our sensors are overloading. That thing is outputting power levels off the charts. We can't even get a proper reading on its armor." Rithos slammed his clawed hand on the console, silencing the room. "I don't care what it is. No ship is invincible. Prepare for another volley. This time, focus fire on a single point." His fleet adjusted formation, hundreds of warships moving into perfect attack positions. If brute force wouldn't work, they would concentrate their fire, overwhelm its shields in a single devastating strike. The order was given. The second barrage was unleashed. Missiles streaked forward, leaving glowing trails. Superheated plasma erupted from Valkyrie cannons. Energy beams, strong enough to melt asteroids, surged toward their target. It was a wall of destruction, a force that had obliterated entire enemy fleets before. And yet, the human warship didn't even move. The moment the attack struck, a ripple of blue energy shimmered around the ship. The powerful shield absorbed every hit like raindrops on a mountain. The weapons of the mighty Valkyrie fleet, the terror of the galaxy, were as useless as pebbles against a giant. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the human warship finally responded. With terrifying precision, the ship's targeting systems activated. The energy readings spiked, a level of power that made every ship's warning systems scream in protest. And then one shot was fired. A single thin beam of crimson energy shot out from the human warship. It was silent, almost unnoticeable compared to the overwhelming firestorm the Valkyrie had just unleashed. But the result was catastrophic. The beam sliced through space, hitting a Valkyrie battleship at its center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in a terrifying flash, the entire ship exploded from the inside out, its armored hull peeling apart like paper. Every Valkyrie officer froze in horror. One shot had completely destroyed a battleship. The Zyrex, who had been watching in silence, could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. They had always thought of the Valkyrie as unstoppable, their technology far beyond their own. And yet, the humans had effortlessly turned them into prey. Admiral Rithos took a step back from his command console, his mind racing. This isn't possible. Even the most powerful weapons in the galaxy required multiple hits to destroy a warship of that size. But this human vessel, it had erased a battleship in one strike. And it wasn't finished. The human warship moved. Slowly, methodically, it turned toward the Valkyrie fleet. More weapons powered up, red warning lights flashing across every enemy ship's systems. The humans had given them a chance. They had warned them. The Valkyrie had ignored it. Now, it was humanity's turn to respond. Rithos, second in command, turned to him, voice filled with panic. "Admiral, what do we do?" For the first time in his career, Rithos had no answer. Across the battlefield, the Zyrex forces watched in awe. They had expected annihilation at the hands of the Valkyrie. But now, An even greater force had entered the war. Admiral Rithos had faced countless battles, crushed dozens of enemies, and conquered entire systems. But now, as he stared at the human warship looming before him, he felt something he had never experienced before. Pure fear. The ship had not moved aggressively, nor had it spoken a single threat. It had only fired one shot, and in that single strike, it had erased a battleship like it was nothing. Now, its weapons were fully online, its systems glowing with a dark red menace, and every ship in his fleet knew the truth. They were outmatched. Completely. The bridge was silent. Officers were frozen, their hands shaking over control panels. Some of them refused to look at the human warship on the main screen, as if avoiding it would somehow make it disappear. Rithos clenched his claws. He had to act. Now, send a message to the humans. We will negotiate. The comms officer flinched. Admiral, are you? Do it. Rithos snapped. The order was sent. The fleet held position. The Valkyrie ships had not retreated yet, but they did not attack either. Every captain knew, one wrong move, and they would be next. Then, the human ship finally responded. A message came through, and for the first time, a human voice echoed across the Valkyrie fleet. It was calm, but there was an edge of steel in every word. This is Commander Elias Grant of the Terran Defense Fleet. You fired first. Now you will listen. Rithos swallowed hard. The human continued, his voice unwavering. We did not come here to start a war, but we will finish one if necessary. Every Valkyrie officer stiffened. Our mission was to protect the Xerx from your aggression, Grant continued. But we are not just here to protect. We are here to teach a lesson. The lights on the human warship brightened. The ship's engines flared. We will not tolerate tyranny. We will not allow the strong to crush the weak. And if you refuse to stand down, then you will face the full power of humanity. The message ended. The battlefield was silent. Then the human warship moved. Not away, not in retreat. Forward, toward the Valkyrie fleet. The Xerx, watching from their own ships, could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Humanity was not afraid. They were not hiding behind negotiations or defensive lines. They were advancing, as if they already knew the outcome. And in that moment, Admiral Rithos understood. They do not fear us. They never did. The humans had not revealed their full strength. They had only fired one warning shot. And if the Valkyrie pushed any further, they would see what true destruction looked like. Panic erupted across his fleet. Admiral, our ships are requesting orders. Our captains want to retreat. We need tow. Rithos exhaled sharply. He had no choice. All ships, stand down. Across the fleet, Valkyrie warships powered down their weapons. Their engines shifted away from battle positions. The terrifying human warship kept moving until it was right in front of them, daring them to resist. But no one did. Humanity had arrived. The surrender order had been given. Admiral Rithos's fleet had powered down, but the battle was not over. The Valkyrie were proud warriors. They had never surrendered so easily before, and now the entire galaxy was watching. Across the stars, countless species had tuned in. Live feeds from war drones and hidden satellites broadcasted everything. The Valkyrie Empire's mighty fleet had been forced into submission by a single human warship. The galactic elites sat in their grand halls, watching in silence. The trading guilds, once dismissive of humans, now rewrote their strategies. The weaker races, always living in fear of stronger empires, suddenly felt hope. And the warlords, they were terrified. Humanity had made its message clear. They were here. They were powerful. And they would not back down. On the Valkyrie flagship, Admiral Rithos stood rigid, staring at the main screen. The human warship was right in front of them, still glowing with the power that had turned a battleship to dust. His officers looked at him, waiting for his decision. His claws clenched. He had only two choices: fight and be destroyed, or accept defeat. His comm officer hesitated. "Admiral, the humans are sending another message." Rethos exhaled. "Put it through." The same voice came again, calm, controlled, and unshaken. "This is Commander Elias Grant. Your weapons are down. You have chosen wisely." Silence followed. Then, Grant's tone became sharp. "But understand this, Valkyrie. If you ever threaten the Zyrex again, we will return. And next time, we will not stop at a warning." The bridge was deathly quiet. Every officer on board felt the weight of those words. A single warship had done this. What would happen if the full force of humanity arrived? Rethos lowered his head. He had no answer. Then, without another word, the human warship turned away. Its engines flared, its power trembled through space, and in an instant, it vanished into the void. The battle was over. But the galaxy would never forget this day. The battle was over. The human warship had left, but its impact remained like a scar across the galaxy. Admiral Rethos sat in his dimly lit quarters aboard his defeated flagship, staring at the reports flooding in from all corners of Valkyrie space. Messages from high-ranking officials, planetary governors, and even rival warlords demanded answers. How had this happened? How had the mighty Valkyrie fleet been humbled by a single warship? His claws trembled as he gripped the edge of his desk. The same question echoed in his mind. Were the humans truly this powerful? Or had they just shown a fraction of what they could do? Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. In the grand halls of the Galactic Trade Council, representatives of dozens of species watched the footage in stunned silence. They had mocked humans once, calling them a minor species. Now, no one laughed. "We must reassess our diplomatic stance with Earth," a reptilian diplomat whispered to his aides. "They are not what we thought they were." On the shadowed worlds of crime syndicates, warlords faced their own reality. Human technology had just crippled an entire fleet. Smuggling rings that once considered Earth an easy target now hesitated. One crime lord growled, "Do we even know what kind of weapons they used?" No one had an answer. Meanwhile, on Earth, the mood was very different. The footage of the battle had shocked even the most optimistic leaders. Humanity had won, but there was no celebration. Because now, they knew what would come next. The galaxy wouldn't just fear them. It would watch them, study them. And sooner or later, someone would challenge them again. Inside the UEG War Council chamber, the highest-ranking military officials reviewed every detail of the battle. A holographic projection of the Valkyrie fleet filled the room. The admiral of the human fleet, an older man with sharp eyes, stood at the center. "Commander Grant proved one thing today," he said, his voice calm but firm. "The galaxy just realized what we can do. That means we have two options: prepare for war or prepare for alliances." Silence. Then a younger officer spoke. "Do you think they'll come for us?" The admiral's eyes darkened. "They'd be fools not to try." Back in Valkyrie space, the defeated fleet limped back home. The mighty empire, once confident in its strength, now questioned everything. And in the shadows, warlords, spies, and ambitious leaders whispered among themselves. They had seen what one human chip could do. The real question was, what would happen when humanity sent an entire fleet? The galaxy did not stay silent for long. The defeat of the Valkyrie fleet had sent shockwaves across every major power. Alliances once considered unshakable began to fracture. Old enemies whispered in dark rooms, scheming, planning. And at the heart of it all was Earth. The humans had proven their power. Now, the galaxy had to decide what to do about it. Valkyrie Prime, War Council Chamber. Admiral Rethos stood before the High Lords, his body rigid with tension. "The humans caught us off guard," he admitted. "But we now understand their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses." A hulking warlord slammed a fist onto the table. "Weaknesses? They destroyed half our fleet. They crippled our best warships. What weaknesses do you speak of? Rethos took a slow breath. He could not afford to show doubt. They are powerful, he said, but they are also few. If we strike before they can build more warships, we can still win. Silence filled the chamber. Then, an elder Valkyrie warrior leaned forward, his voice calm but cold. If we move against the humans now, we risk everything. We need more than brute force. We need allies. The chamber descended into whispers. For the first time in their history, the Valkyrie were considering an alliance of necessity, not out of strength, but out of fear. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, a dozen different factions watched closely. The syndicate warlords, ruling the lawless zones of the galaxy, saw an opportunity. If the Valkyrie were afraid, it meant profits. They sent their best spies to Earth, hoping to uncover human secrets. The Dominion, a ruthless empire that had long considered humans insignificant, suddenly changed its stance. Their diplomats prepared a message for Earth. Would it be a warning? Or an offer of alliance? Even the Galactic Trade Council, a neutral power that avoided war, couldn't ignore what had happened. They feared conflict would disrupt trade. So they sent a quiet message to Earth's leaders. Come to the table, before the galaxy comes for you. On Earth, the human leadership was already preparing. Inside the War Council chamber, intelligence reports from every corner of the galaxy were being analyzed. The Admiral stood at the center, his expression grim. They're watching us, he said. They fear us. But fear turns to desperation. A young officer nodded. They'll either try to negotiate or prepare for war. The Admiral's gaze darkened. That's why we must be ready for both. The humans had proven their strength. Now they would have to prove something far more difficult, that they were ready for whatever came next. The galaxy was holding its breath. Every major power had seen what humanity was capable of. Some wanted peace, others wanted revenge. But one thing was clear. A final confrontation was inevitable. Valkyrie Prime, the War Council's decision. The High Lords had debated for days. Some argued for war. Others feared another crushing defeat. Finally, Admiral Rethos stood before them, his voice cold and firm. We cannot allow the humans to grow stronger. If we wait, their warships will become unstoppable. We must strike now, with everything we have. The decision was made. A massive invasion fleet was assembled, the largest in Valkyrie history. Their target, Earth. Earth, the last warning. On Earth, the War Council received the news. The Valkyrie had gathered a force that outnumbered humanity's fleet 10-1. It was the largest armada ever seen. The Admiral stood before his officers, his expression grim. They think numbers will save them. They think we'll run and hide. He looked at the holographic battle map, showing thousands of incoming enemy ships. They don't understand humanity. A young officer clenched his fists. What's the plan, sir? The Admiral's eyes narrowed. We don't wait for them to come to us. He tapped a point deep in space. We take the fight to them. The battle begins. The human fleet moved first. Instead of waiting for Earth to be surrounded, they launched a preemptive strike at the Valkyrie fleet as it approached. The Valkyrie expected a defensive battle. They did not expect humanity to go on the offensive. Missiles and railgun rounds tore through enemy formations. Human warships, outnumbered but far more advanced, used superior tactics to cripple the Valkyrie fleet before they could react. Explosions lit up space as ship after ship was destroyed. The Valkyrie commanders panicked. Their fleet was supposed to be unstoppable, but now it was falling apart. Admiral Rethos watched in horror as the human flagship cut through his forces like a blade. His fleet was being decimated. Then the final blow came. The human warship fired its main cannon, a weapon unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever seen. A massive energy blast ripped through their command ship, tearing it apart in an instant. The remaining Valkyrie forces fled in terror. The aftermath. The battle was over. Humanity had won. The Valkyrie, once one of the most feared empires in the galaxy, had been humiliated. Their forces broken, their leadership scattered. The message was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread like wildfire. Factions that had once mocked humanity now feared them. Some rushed to make alliances. Others retreated into silence, unsure of what to do next. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. They had tried to challenge Earth, and Earth had answered.